How do you empower people to build their social presence online? Well, that's a critical issue as more and more organizations are now asking employees to maintain a social presence on platforms like LinkedIn. Today, I'm talking about the intersection of thought leadership and social selling. Joining me is Mandy McEwen. She's the CEO of Mod Girl Marketing. Today's conversation will be fast paced for sure. I'm Bill Sherman. This is Leveraging Thought Leadership. Ready? Let's begin. Welcome to the show, Mandy.
Thanks so much for having me, Bill. I'm excited to be here.
So let's dive in, and I want to focus today on a conversation about really the commitment that's needed to put content out into the world on a regular basis. And I think a lot of people struggle about that and find excuses not to do it. Sort their sock drawer, write another email,
Yep.
reschedule an appointment, whatever.
Yep.
Talk to me a little bit about, maybe let's start with the common excuses in terms of creating content that you've heard people give you, right?
Well, the first one is I'm not good at creating content. I mean, that's like what everyone says. Like, I'm not good. I'm not good at it. My content sucks, right? That's excuse number one that everyone has, I feel like. Or like, I'm not a good writer, which technically you don't have to be a good writer to post content on LinkedIn. You just don't, storytelling a little bit maybe, but those are like the two common things. It's like, I'm just not good at it. And then the third one is I don't know what to post. Like that's really common too. Is like, I have no clue what I'm supposed to be posting. So I would say those three things. I'm not a good writer. I'm not good at posting content and I have no clue what to post are like the most common excuses I hear.
Well, and where I see this then happen is if you get them over that initial hurdle and they start posting, then one of the habits that you might see is it almost becomes like someone's personal Facebook or Instagram account where they're
Yeah.
taking random snapshots through the day of here's an interesting thought that I had, but there's no focus to what
Mm-hmm.
they're talking about, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's just all over. It's like, the beautiful mind where there's just little sparks
Yes.
of light everywhere, right?
Yes. Yeah, no, you have a good point. So there's all these different angles, right, that we see people taking. And so yeah, you do definitely want to have a little bit more focused strategic output when it comes to the content generation. But hell, if that's what it takes to get you to post content, is just post random things at first, go for it. Like I'm all game for that. And then maybe hone it in, and rein it in once you're comfortable. But heck, as long as you're posting, to begin with.
Yeah. And so that first habit of getting online and being more than a consumer of
Mm-hmm.
ideas,
Mm-hmm.
but to make that shift to being a creator and someone who's contributing to conversation. One of the places that I think people undervalue a lot, and I'd like to hear your point on this as well, is jumping into conversations that are ongoing
Yep.
and joining the conversation and comment.
100%. Yeah, that's actually, Bill, that was actually going to be my number one tip for people. That's like, if you are listening to this and you fall in this category of coming up with excuses or you're just not comfortable writing content, the easiest way is to do what Bill just said, is to join conversations, start leaving comments on people's posts, and then turn those comments into your own content. It's really super easy to do. So it's a lot easier for our brains to go and respond to something than it is for us to come up with something brand new. That's just the human nature, right? So if you are looking at content, that's great on LinkedIn and you're engaging and you're part of that conversation, leave meaningful comments, more than just great posts, like leave an actual legit comment that's a little bit thought out, and then copy and paste it into a document or whatever. Like I have a content document that I just dump all my ideas into.
I do too. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
so useful.
it's genius. It's such an easy way to like, okay, all our ideas are here in one area and then we're ready to write content. It's there. But that's all you have to do is just start leaving comments every single day. I recommend 5 minimum meaningful comments a day. Then go back at the end of the week or even 3 days later and you have loads of content ideas that you do not have to come up with from scratch.
And with that, there's something that makes it a lot easier in terms of getting over that initial hurdle when you're joining an initial conversation and you're responding to something that's already out there. It's
Mm-hmm.
easier to jump into an existing conversation rather than to start with a blank field in the,
Yeah,
so what do you want to talk about, right? Or
right.
hit record on the camera. And building that skill of that comfort to be a conversation starter is something that you can acquire over time,
Yep.
but beginning by joining a conversation. So part of that is finding interesting conversations, right?
Yes.
So let's go there for a moment.
Okay.
How do you find within the world of LinkedIn, which is now what, 750
Massive.
million
Yep.
users or something
Plus.
obscene, right? Yeah.
Yep.
Um, it's in some ways the world's largest cocktail party, which, if you're not an extreme extrovert, can almost be intimidating, right?
Yeah, for
How do
sure.
you find a corner of the world where you can say, oh, these are my peeps, I can talk?
Yeah, solid question. So, and there's a couple of different angles here, right? So you have the sales angle where you need to be engaging with your prospects,
Hmm.
content for one, just so you're on their radar, and it's just part of our sales process anyway for engaging, then start the relationship, right? But in terms of joining conversations and meaningful and kind of finding your peeps, if you will. I love hashtags, looking at LinkedIn hashtags, hashtag research, just clicking on hashtags and see what people are talking about. And even just typing in words, it doesn't even have to be a hashtag, just typing in certain topics and then viewing. You can even, so the search bar in LinkedIn is cool because you can view like most recent, from the past 24 hours or, that's a time frame, right? So I use that a lot. I'll just go in and I'll type something into the search bar and it'll come up with like, do I want to look at content only from my first degree connections? Or do I want to look
Hmm.
at all content? And do I want to sort this only from the last 24 hours? So that's what I do. I use the LinkedIn search bar and I look at, and then I also have people that I follow. So if you're just starting out, use the LinkedIn search bar and see what people are talking about and the influencers or thought leaders that are consistently talking about your content topics, right? They don't have to necessarily be a competitor, but just the types of content that you want to talk about, your industry, your expertise. Find those people that are already doing it and follow them. And one way you can do that is just by typing things in the search bar and looking at who's posting it and then just perusing their feeds, and then making sure they're on your radar as well.
So I want to expand on what you said there. I think one of the things that a lot of people, when they go on to LinkedIn or any other social media, is they start as a passive consumer of what's in their news feed, right?
Mhm.
And they're assuming the world is only reading what the provider, LinkedIn or Twitter, et cetera, is putting in that feed.
Yep.
You need to take agency on that to start crafting that feed so there's more signal for you,
100%.
rather than just relying on an algorithm somewhere determining what's going to engage you. The
Mhm.
more you craft your feed, and you, like you said, using search, for example, or
Mhm.
looking at the people that you follow, the more likely you will spend meaningful time online because there's
100%.
less noise, right?
Yeah, for sure. And when you start engaging with that strategic content, it's going to start showing you more of that same type of content. So your feed is going to be filled with legit content that you actually like should be spending your time commenting on. Because that's another thing too, is like, we're sitting here telling people comment, but Bill, we didn't really get into like be strategic about your commenting,
Well, and that's where I want to
That's
go
where
on
you're
this, right?
going.
Yeah, yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. Cause there's so many like massive influencers on LinkedIn, right? And they might have nothing to do with your industry or target market at all. And it's fine every now and then if you leave a comment on them. But I see so many people like, I'm leaving comments on, these people with 1 million followers. I'm like, that's not going to get you clients though, like you might get some visibility, but you have to be strategic. So I'm glad you brought that up because we're not just encouraging people to go willy-nilly start posting on anything. You have to be strategic about it.
Absolutely. And you also have to be patient. It's
Yes.
in some ways, and these days putting out resumes and job searches, there are so many applications flying around right now in the summer of
Mhm.
2021 and people looking for different roles and that. But the way that I view the conversation stream on LinkedIn is that it's going to take a while for you to join that stream and for people to recognize you. One comment isn't going to
Mhm.
get someone to look at you and go, oh, wow, this person is brilliant. I need to hire them or their company. They've
Yep.
changed my life, right?
From one comment. No, consistency and patience is key. Like you have to be consistent. That's why, I mean, if you leave 5 comments a day for 2 weeks, you're going to get some visibility if they're awesome, if they're decent comments, right? But like you said, it takes time, but not just time, but consistency. You can't post 3 comments one week, 0 the next, and then 20 the next. Like, it doesn't work that way. Like, you have to be consistent. That's why I tell people, put it on your freaking calendar. Like, literally put down these little simple tasks, leave 5 comments a day, like block it into your calendar so it gets done.
And with that, this becomes something that if your organization is trying to move to a place where your sales team is using LinkedIn or social for social selling, or you're using it for thought leadership and channels, then you have to recognize that people need time that they can allocate to this. And you also, as a manager or leader, need to coach to that, right? You have
Yes.
to get them past that insecurity of an initial posting and past the impatience of, well, I left 10 comments today. Why didn't the phone ring with a lead? Not going to happen,
Right.
right?
Right. Well, and you bring up a good point too about, just kind of empowering your team. A lot of employees also are kind of afraid to even get on LinkedIn because they might, if the organization has not discussed this, right? If you're not empowering your people, they might think that you think that they're just messing around on LinkedIn and not actually spending quality time. So they might, a lot of people have raised concerns like, I don't even know, like if this is, obviously not ones that hire us for LinkedIn, but ones that I haven't even thought about it yet. They're like, well, I want to be active on LinkedIn more, but like my employer hasn't really encouraged that. And to me, like, I don't want to get in trouble for me spending time on social media.
Mhm.
So these are conversations that needs to happen at the managerial level and above, with empowering your employees to do this and saying, look, we want you to spend time on LinkedIn, and here's how we want you to spend that time on LinkedIn. We're going to give
So
you
if you were to
freedom.
offer a tip or two to that manager, what would
Mhm.
you say of how do you start that conversation? And what are the 2 or 3 things that you say during that conversation?
Yes. So first of all is letting them know, like, we want you to spend time on LinkedIn. Like, that's key number one. It's just like letting them know, look, LinkedIn is a really amazing resource for us as a company to grow, not just our authority, thought leadership, visibility, but sales opportunities as well. And we want you all leveraging it, but in a strategic way, and then kind of laying that out for them. So here's what we want you to do. So you kind of have to give them, this is what we do for organizations is we really empower them by giving them these sort of resources. So examples, right? So here's an example of 4 meaningful comments that we left. And here's an idea, here are people that you can follow. So you can't just say like, this is what we want you to do. Have fun. Bye. Go do
Mhm.
it. Because it won't happen. Right. Or if it does, it won't happen in the greatest way possible. So you kind of have to guide them. And this is where, hiring companies helps, the LinkedIn experts that kind of can guide you through this. But if you're a manager that's great at LinkedIn, awesome. You can kind of do this for them and just give them examples of, these are the people, these are the hashtags I want you to follow. These are the types of posts. Here's an example of a comment that's great. If you want to share our company posts, this is what you can say, like share it and then give your, either take a quote from it or leave your 2 cents on it and share it. And just kind of walking them through, this is what works well on LinkedIn. Here are some examples, and this is what we want you to do. So giving them those resources and kind of training, even at a very high level, so they feel comfortable doing that.
One of the things that I use as a analogy to this is if you were to send people to a trade show back when we had trade shows, or we will in the future post COVID, right? And you
Mhm.
told people, go talk to people at the trade show, but you didn't equip them in any way. And you
Mhm.
told them, there's a booth in the exhibition hall. Go talk to people. Good
Uh-huh.
luck, be well, right?
Yep. Same thing.
You would have this deer in the headlights look of horror of, what do you want me to do?
Uh-huh.
Except here, they're doing it on their phone, they're doing it from home, they're doing it at work, and it's something where they can't escape it. It's not just one trip to a conference somewhere. They're expected to be present regularly.
Mhm.
So talk about that anxiety a little bit. Have you seen it? Do you have a story or an example that you've run across as you've worked with organizations and individuals?
Yeah, no, there's all of them, all of them have anxiety over this, right? And that's why it's just a matter of getting people comfortable with the whole process in general, and then making it a part of their daily tasks, right? And that's a big thing too, is like, it shouldn't be seen as like this burden that we're forcing you to do as a company, right? And I'm speaking as if I'm a manager of a company, right? Like,
Mhm.
it should be something that is worked into your daily prospecting. Like, you're already doing these things. You're already making, if they're making outbound calls, sending outbound emails, leveraging Sales Navigator, you guys are already spending your time on this. So it just needs to be part of the process. And so when you make it part of the process, like it's just like a no brainer, this is just what we do. And you empower people to a point where they feel comfortable doing it and they have the resources, and then they can go back and get help and ask questions, then it's fine. And that anxiety kind of disappears once they get into it, right? I mean, they're going to be a little, until they start doing it. And then they realize, oh, this isn't so bad when you give them what they need, but it's just making this part of the normal process and empowering them with the tools and strategies, et cetera, that they need to make it happen.
If you are enjoying this episode of Leveraging Thought Leadership, please make sure to subscribe. If you'd like to help spread the word about the podcast, please leave a 5-star review and share it with your friends. We are available on Apple Podcast, Spotify, and all major platforms, as well as at leveragingthoughtleadership.com. I know you've used LinkedIn personally as a platform for many years, and then you focused your business for also a number of years on really helping people understand that as a platform. Where have you seen people get tripped up? What mistakes have they made that they almost look at and go, man, we tried this, we regret it, and boy, never again?
A couple come to mind. The first one is just the obvious, which I feel like most companies at some point have tried this, or at least like have been bombarded by people. It's just like the cheating way of using LinkedIn, which is just blasting out messages to people. Even if you don't use automation, it's just, okay, we have this list of people. This is our ABM target list. Go out there and start sending loads of in-mails, and that's what they do. And that's their version of LinkedIn lead gen. Is just, we have a list of people. Let's go send them as many in-mails as we possibly can, and then just wait to see what happens.
Annoy them till they say yes.
Right. Exactly. And just keep sending them until someone responds and says yes. Yep. Yeah. So, and unfortunately, a lot of enterprises are still doing that, which is why we exist to help them with that. Because I don't like in-mail at all. We train, build relationships, and send connection requests to people. There's no need to send an in-mail unless they're not allowing people to send them requests. Like, I get that, some people's privacy settings, but there's no need to send cold. It's just like a cold email, someone that doesn't even know you. Like, that doesn't work. It doesn't work as much anymore. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing is just corporatizing everything. Content LinkedIn is just lame. It's very corporatized. It's just all corporate speak. It's not humanized. So it lacks that storytelling element, because they're just sending people to white papers and webinars, and I feel like that happens a lot still too, is because people don't know how they should be leveraging, and people and executives, running these LinkedIn pages for enterprises, they just they're not armed with that, the knowledge and experience to know what, because that's just what you do. Like, historically, you post lead magnets, and webinar invites to social media. And so those are two things that I still see happening that just aren't working anymore, or ever. The in-mail really never worked. I don't know, the corporate speak, it's enough to be like, oh, look, they're active on LinkedIn, but nothing else happens. You get a couple likes, maybe a couple comments, but it's not driving anything, It's
checking the box and saying, yes, I did it, right? So let's explore for a moment some of the experiments that you've done. I know you've done a fair amount of LinkedIn Live, for example, and you're continually trying and exploring new things.
Always.
Talk to me about, when you're working on a platform, the experimentation mindset that you need.
Yeah, it's key, Bill, honestly. And that's the thing too, is you kind of have to have a thick skin in this content creation world, right? Because you have to be willing to experiment and try new things. And if something falls flat, like, that's okay. You can't get upset about it or beat yourself up about it, right? Like, I am constantly experimenting and trying new things just to see what's working and what isn't. So you kind of have to have that mentality of, kind of like an investigator, if you will, right? So I'm going to try my own things, test it out, but I'm also going to look at what other people are doing and try to like gauge from there what I feel like is doing well, and maybe tie a little bit of that into what I'm doing. But you 100% have to have this, let's try, see what happens, and let's keep optimizing mentality. Like, it's never ending. Marketing in general is an iterative process. I mean, it never ends, right? Content creation is no different. Like, you're always looking for new things, trying new things, optimizing, trying to figure what works, what doesn't. I mean, it's a never ending game. So if you're not comfortable with that, then it's just not going to work. And it could be something that you grow over time. I'm not saying you have to be comfortable with that right out the gate, but you do if you want to succeed with this over time.
So what percent of your experiments succeed? And what's sort of your threshold of the it's worth trying out, right? So
Mhm.
what's your success rate in terms of experiments? Because my guess is that's probably a lower number than most people would think, because I see you try a lot of things. So
I feel like everything is a success to some degree because I learn, right? So I'm
okay,
like,
okay.
what's a success to me?
Well,
Because
and
I
if you
learned
frame it that way,
something.
yeah, yeah.
Right. I would say, oh, I don't know. I would say probably, and it depends on how we're defining success, right? We could sit here all day talking about like the granular details here, but I would say over 50% probably in some degree, but I would say like 50, let's just say 50-50. Like we just split it down the middle and say
Hmm.
50% do really, really, really well, and the other 50 do all right, but there's still something to learn from that.
Hmm.
So I'm just throwing that out there because there is so much still that, if we post something and it's not a home run, but we're like, oh, we learned a lot about this just from the comments or so, whatever it is, there's always little things we can take away from that.
So are you and the process you approach, are you the sort of style of rapid prototype and get it out and see how it works? Or are you plan, then let's pull the trigger?
Yeah, I am a very fast mover, right? So
Yep.
I am get it out the door, but in a way that's quality. So I'm also OCD perfectionist too. So it's like this interesting dynamic with me is like I'm a really fast mover, but I want it done right,
Hmm.
So we don't spend tons of time planning, like you said, like plan, but we do. I personally, and then I pass to my team, I do make sure it's quality and I'm spending time to make sure that this is what I want associated with my name and my face, right? But we very much are fast movers where, okay, we have this idea, let's get it done, let's get any edits out and let's get it out the door. We don't spend weeks planning.
We've been throwing the words content and thought leadership around on a regular basis in this conversation. I'd love to hear your definitions of content and thought leadership, and how are they the same or how are they different?
Oh, that's a really good question. 100% different. No
Hmm.
question. They are completely different. Anyone can throw up content. Any company, any person can throw up content, and that is content. Thought leadership is completely different ballgame. Because with thought leadership, you are really trying to start meaningful dialogue within a community and not only, brand yourself as kind of this person starting this dialogue, which would be the thought leader and kind of bringing up these ideas and discussions, but you're also pulling in other people for that discussion, which is kind of a circle of thought leadership, right? And so to me, they're two totally different things. And not on that note earlier, like, do you plan? You do need to plan a little bit for thought leadership content. It's not, and especially people like you and I who are used to this. This is what we do for a living, Bill. It's easier for you and I to quickly come up with thought leadership content. This is what we do every day. I get that.
Hmm.
Most people are not like us. I understand. So with that said, you do need to plan a little bit for the thought leadership content in terms of like what is it that your market, what are their pain points, what are they trying to accomplish, and how can you be the resource? So you're not another sales rep, you are an industry trusted resource. How do you get that way? By sharing meaningful, helpful content and starting dialogue around that. That is totally different than throwing up a link to a webinar, which can be considered content.
One of the things I wind up doing is I'll keep a running note of conversations that I have through the day. And after each conversation I have, I try to record one thing where I like to turn a phrase or an idea or something that I said or something that the person I was talking to, they said it was an issue or something they're concerned about, because those conversations are ongoing sort of like catalysts for
Yes.
you to be able to create meaningful material for people. And
100%.
I think what we do often is we go through conversations so fast, meeting to meeting, especially in the Zoom world, that we don't take that 30 seconds to go, oh, what did I say that was good? What turn of phrase did I use that I should use again? Right?
Mm-hmm.
What idea should I
Totally.
flesh out a little bit? And so if
Yeah.
you insert that wedge, that becomes a good way, especially if you're just starting out, trying to figure it out.
Yeah, it's a mindset shift, really, Bill. So that's why I tell people, if you are consciously aware that every conversation you have, even your thoughts, can be turned into thought leadership content, it becomes a hell of a lot easier. But you have to train your mind to think like that. So just like you said, every phone call I'm on, I'm taking notes on every phone call. I'll be like, oh, that was good. I'll bold it. I'll write myself a little comment in the Google Doc. Then I'll go back and I'll add it to my content list, So my brain is constantly like, oh, that was a good thought. And I tell this to sales reps, like, there are people asking you questions every single day. You're talking to prospects. People are asking you questions. People are coming up with challenges. Write those down, make a post, like boom, you have thought leadership content. But most people they haven't trained their brain to think like that yet, and it's like a habit that you and I have. It's ingrained in us, but not a lot.
But it's also a skill that needs to be developed. And I'd love to hear your thought on this, because I think more and more, if we look now versus 10 years ago versus looking 10 years in the future, the ability to be able to be a leading voice within whatever field you're working on becomes essential. You need people who turn to you, look to you, and say, what are you saying? My thought is, if you're invisible on social media specifically, you're invisible in sales.
Yeah, right? 100%. Yeah. And that's like what I'm trying to, my whole goal with working with enterprise sales teams is to get that through their head. Like, look, you don't want to just be another sales rep on LinkedIn. No one likes sales reps on LinkedIn. No one likes SDRs. No one likes BDRs. Like everyone avoids them like the plague. But if you are seen as a trusted resource because you're sharing valuable content and you're engaging with the community and you're helping people, then you're not seen as just another sales rep. Like, you are legitimately seen as a trusted industry resource. And it doesn't matter what your sales title or what your job title is, if it's sales or not. And that's how you get an amazing sales team that is doing big things and blows your competition out of the water, because most sales teams are not doing that. But when you empower and train your sales teams properly to think like that, it's a whole new ballgame.
Well, and what you can do is, in addition to having sales talking to customers, you can have sales talk to people within the organization from different perspectives and really accelerate the flow of ideas and insights that are already within your organization out and beyond. And so whether that's inviting someone from a customer support or fulfillment perspective and having them talk to your sales team, just of here are things that you can share with your audience. Those pieces of bringing knowledge forward to your client or customer.
Totally. The product team, right? Like there's so many different ways, you can do that within an organization. It's just taking the time and making sure it happens, right? Which is a big challenge and what most enterprises aren't doing. And that's
and if you're a sales manager, back in the old days of boiler room sales, you would be used to, okay, did you call on X number of prospects today, right? Did you make your number of calls or your number of visits? Now, I mean, you could say, did you make X number of comments or posts this week, right? But it's a different sort of relationship building. You have to be real and present on LinkedIn or any other social platform. Otherwise, that lack of authenticity shines through because it's missing.
Yeah. And that's the thing. And that's why it is totally different. It's a longer game now, but you're slowing down the outreach to speed up the outcomes. What my good friend Bryn says, right? So you're slowing it down, but you're getting way better results. So it's going to take longer to build these relationships. But once you do that, they start coming in like crazy. And then you are just constant. It's a snowball effect. It just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And not to mention, they're easier to sell because you're building their relationship and you're helping them ahead of time. It's not so much a numbers game anymore. Like that example you said, it's a numbers game, the old school sales. How many calls did you make? How many emails did you send? Right? It's all numbers, numbers, numbers. It's not like that anymore. You still need the numbers. Yes, I'm not saying that's not important, but you have to be more strategic about it. It's not just about how many people did you call, how many people did you blast out messages and emails to. That's not how it works. Like, you have to be very strategic and build meaningful relationships. And there's a whole process for that you need to follow in order to get lasting results that are going to not only obviously increase your sales, but help the company for the long haul be seen as a trusted industry influence that is making an impact and doing good things for the industry and the community, not just another company that has a bunch of sales reps that are lazy and just trying to spam people.
So that's a really good point to end on. You and I could talk for another couple of hours easily at full speed. But let's leave it here. I want to ask you one question. If someone wants to reach out to you and get in touch, how do they do so?
LinkedIn, of course, would be
Yep.
the best way. So Mandy McEwen at LinkedIn. And then Luminetics.io is our LinkedIn specific agency, but I'm always available on LinkedIn. It'd probably be easier. So hit me up there. I'd be more than happy to connect, and feel free to send a connection message and mention that you heard me on Bill's podcast, and we can chat and go from there.
Awesome. Thanks, Mandy.
Thank you so much, Bill.
If you're interested in organizational thought leadership, then I invite you to subscribe to the OrgTL newsletter. Each month, we talk about the people who create, curate, and deploy thought leadership on behalf of their organizations. Go to the website orgtl.com and choose Join Our Newsletter. I'll leave a link to the website as well as my LinkedIn profile in the show notes. Thanks for listening, and I look forward to hearing what you thought of the show.